like and share some more, and then just tell them to get on that bandwagon, right? Yeah, it's terrible. That's terrible. Why would you choose crackers of all things to eat while we're recording a podcast?
What's the thing called that when you don't like hearing people eat?
Misophonia.
Is it really?
I have it, yes.
Oh, misophonia. This
horrible.
is even better that I'm on a microphone.
Hey there, and welcome to the Perhaps This Is the Moment podcast. I'm your host, Davis Watts.
And I'm Davis's wife and co-host, Abby Watts. The Perhaps This Is the Moment podcast is a weekly reminder that you were created for right now. Doesn't mean there wasn't a purpose for your past or a plan for your future, just that right now is the moment you've been given.
We're a husband and wife team who loves the church, music, and sharing faith in a down-to-earth way. So journey with us through the fun, the chaos, and the challenges as we dare to think, perhaps this is the moment.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Perhaps This Is the Moment podcast. This week, our goal is to not cry. Mm-hmm. This is an uncomfortable topic, but definitely an important one, and it's grief and being okay and being in that place of grief. And not just for a day or two, but accepting that it's okay to not be okay for as long as you need. In fact, there are actually like mourning prescriptions in earlier cultures with these patterns of behavior that they gave to those who were grieving. They said, okay, do this. The public was asked to do certain things to support those who were grieving. And throughout parts of Europe until recently, they would even hire professional mourners to come to emote and to wail at funerals. But we struggle so much with showing grief and being in a place of grieving or unhappiness. It's so weird how we've gone from requiring it and hiring it to avoiding it and trying to mask it. And we have to ask, why, when someone gives us permission to grieve, does it trigger an outpouring of emotion, kind of like this valve has been opened? And I say that because we've gotten emails at our station where we work, our radio station, because of this one song that we started playing called Maybe It's Okay. It's by We Are Messengers. And people are emailing saying, thank you for that. I needed to know that. It's like that valve was turned.
Maybe it's okay if I'm not okay, 'cause the one who holds the world is holding on to me. Maybe it's alright if I'm not alright, 'cause the one who holds the stars is holding my whole life.
We had an opportunity to sit down with Darren Mulligan of We Are Messengers, and before the song came out, I had gotten a little teaser version of it. And, he walked with me through a lot of what I went through with Maddie. And so this is how that conversation went.
And do you know that song that they sent you, Maybe It's Okay?
Yeah. I listened to that song just before you got here. I got the link, and I tell you, it's refreshing to hear someone able to articulate the words, it's okay to not be okay. Because in my walk with grief, that is one of the things that I struggle to articulate.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I had the blessing and the fortune of having a number of very godly men in my life.
Yeah.
Who came to me and said, Davis, you're angry right now, and that's okay. And you're not going to be okay for a while. And you know what? That's all right too.
That's the kind of advice we need to give.
It's what we need to hear.
This whole thing, pray harder, read harder, be more spiritual. That's not the kind of way Jesus operates, even himself. Like, he's the guy that's coming, putting his arms around, saying, here. And okay, Jesus on the earth is God in the flesh. And so inevitably he was healing everybody left, right, and center. That's just who he is, because he's bad to the bone in a very good way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So in our life, we have to believe without seeing. And he said to Thomas, remember when Thomas was doubting and he put his hands in Jesus' side?
Yes.
And he said, Thomas, blessed are you because you've seen, but more blessed are those who believe but have not seen.
Right.
So are we still going to believe when we have not seen the outcome? And if we're going to choose to believe when we don't see the outcome we want, then we have to find some other respite. And the respite, I think, comes in saying, maybe it's okay if I'm not okay right now, because the one who does hold the world is holding on to me. And if I can believe that for the rest of my days, then I can agree with scriptures like the one in James where it says, if you persevere, your faith will be made perfect. You'll lack in nothing. Because what all your perseverance through all those years, if it was just wasted, then none of it was worth anything. But that's not the case.
Right.
Because your perseverance, Davis, has been making your faith perfect. And I know you don't feel like you have a perfect faith, and neither do I. But he sees it.
Right.
He understands what we don't understand. And he remains when we think he's long gone. You know?
Yes.
He's holding on to your baby girl as much now as he was then. It's just different location.
Yeah. And now she's advocating for me, which I know. And I remember.
She's whispering in his ear.
And thank you again for those words, Aaron. That's just, thank you. Thank you very much.
It's true.
Father, let your kingdom come. Let your will be done here in my heart as in heaven. Oh, maybe it's okay if I'm not okay. 'Cause the one who holds the world is holding on to me. Maybe it's alright if I'm not alright. 'Cause the one who holds the stars is holding my whole life.
As I re-listened to that, he kind of made three main points in that conversation that we were having. We kind of took this little journey and had these waypoints.
Yeah, like kind of built layers.
Right. And it starts with our ability to be okay with that grief or that sorrow or that pain that we're experiencing in our life. And, you know, right at the beginning, he kind of opens up. We didn't have a deep conversation about it right then, but later on when we went out to lunch, we really dug in to this idea of the people around us. Anytime you're going through a difficult time, either struggling with grief or a divorce or, you get laid off from your job, the people around you get really uncomfortable and you start getting the platitudes. Well, God tells you he's never going to give you any more than you can handle. Or
You get lemons, make lemonade.
yes. One of Maddie's favorite things to do, she never got to do it, but she always said, I want to put on a t-shirt that says life and walk around the mall and hand people lemons. I'm like, that is genius. That is absolutely genius. But, we walk through our life getting those lemons handed to us so often. And people are uncomfortable with it. They don't know how to sit with it. They don't know how to be with it. And so they tell you things like, well, maybe you need to pray harder, or maybe you need dig a little deeper into the scripture to get there. But no, maybe not. Maybe you just need to be okay with it for a little while and be present in it and see where Jesus shows up.
Yeah, and then he goes a layer deeper by saying maybe by not being okay and not being like filled with, not having a smile on your face is a way to grow in our faith, to experience Jesus, even though he's not here in the flesh like Thomas had, but also you're feeling like, where are you? I'm not okay. I know that you're still holding on to me. That's what he says in the chorus, because the one who holds the world is holding on to me. So it's like, I know that you're here, but this is really hard and I'm really not feeling all right, but I'm growing because I know that even in the darkness, you're still God.
Yeah, and then we've got that final step of that persevering in faith, which actually brings us to holiness. Jesus said, blessed are those who believe who haven't seen. And when you're living this life of believing, even though you haven't seen those miracles that he was here producing every single day, and being able to persevere in that and hold on to that faith and know that's what is drawing us closer to him every single day, that's what is propelling us into holiness. And that's just a beautiful image that pain really propels you into the presence of God or into holiness.
And I think it draws other people in too. I mean, anytime you meet somebody who has this story of tragedy or really just a very, very difficult time in their life, and they can say that they are faithful, it's like, wow. I mean, I think it is an encouragement to so many people around you too. But we just want to avoid it. We try to avoid pain and suffering as much as possible. You want to get out of that place as quickly as possible. But I think sometimes that place is exactly where God wants you to be, because he knows that is somewhere that he can get into. Sometimes it has to be that moment that we open ourselves up. But, you mentioned this a few seconds ago, that Darren and you guys talked about how to pray with people, how to walk with them when they're in one of these difficult moments. Mm-hmm. And I think that for me, what I've learned as far as how to pray is I pray for peace. Because, if you want to say to somebody, oh, well, God will never give you anything more than you can handle. Or when life gives you lemons, if you're not a faithful person, if you're not a Christian or whatever, if you say life gives you lemons. Well, but what if you also, kind of a wrong way to pray is, Lord, make all this go away.
Right.
Or Lord,
take away the pain.
Make Jenny happy again. Maybe not. So I found that just saying, just give me peace is a great prayer, because you can still, in that place of grieving and of sadness, still have peace. Just like Darren said, because you are still believing that the one who holds the world is holding on to you. As you're crumbled, as you're hurting, he's holding on to you.
And I think one of the biggest problems we have with that as a culture, as a society, is that because we're not comfortable sitting in that place, we never learn how to. Mm-hmm. We're always told, I was always told by my parents, suck it up, kid. Best foot forward and all that, whenever you're going through a difficult time. I was never really taught how to sit with my feelings. And if we're surrounded by people who are uncomfortable by the feelings that we're going through, then when do we have the opportunity to learn how to sit with them and to be comfortable with them and to be patient with the process? And I spent a lot of money on therapy trying to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that I definitely experienced that when I was going through my divorce. Like my lawyer, for example, almost every time we got together, she's like, "You're young, you're beautiful, you're gonna find somebody new like right away." And I was like, "Okay, but this hurts and this is sad." And I didn't expect comforting words or counseling from my lawyer. That's not necessarily what I was looking. So I just appreciated her kindness. But we say that to each other way too much. And we've been talking about We Are Messengers and Darren Mulligan and what he said about it. But one song that I really found comfort in, literally it came to me as I was going through my divorce, was Jason Gray, Not Right Now.
I know someday, I know somehow I'll be okay, but not right now, not right now.
I remember when you pulled me into one of the production rooms very shortly after your divorce to play that for me. I'm trying to remember if it was before or after Maddie began rejecting, but I know that it affected you so profoundly that you had to share it. And you're like, this is what I'm going through right now. And I found this song. Have you listened to the whole album? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And you took me in there and you shared that song with me, and it's just so powerful.
Yeah. Like, for instance, he says, "Don't tell me when I'm grieving that this happened for a reason." Like, right? Isn't that what everybody says? Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? This layoff, it happened for a reason, and you might not know it now. You might not know it down the road, but God will reveal that to you. And that is true. That is absolutely true. But that's not really what you want to hear. And he says in that next line, he says, "Maybe one day we'll talk about the dreams that had to die for new ones to come alive." And And as hopeful as I was when I first started journeying through divorce, as hopeful as I was to remarry and to find love again, I still was mourning so much, including the death of my dreams, that the dream for a, what you always imagine your family is going to look like as you get older and stuff.
The perfect family with the white picket fence and the kids bringing the grandkids over.
Right. Right. And, that line too has kind of come back to me in our relationship. And when we started dating, and as you became a stepfather to my sons, because I see a lot of my dreams coming true in our family. And I want so much for you to feel the same way, but I also know that there were dreams that had to die, and marriage and even you being able to let go of having to care for Maddie so much, that in order for this life to happen, so I always think about that. I'm like, gosh, I'm so happy. And I know he's so happy, but what had to get left behind to move into that place?
Right. And, probably a whole nother podcast, a whole nother aspect of that is being okay to be okay. I'm having to learn that it's okay for me to have a happy life,
right,
and to be fulfilled and to be happy. And everybody says, that's what she would want. That's what if you've lost a spouse or your parent or your child, like I have, you always hear they would want you to be happy. They would want this. But it doesn't make the guilt any less present to know that I'm having this dream life that I always wanted to be able to provide for her and that I always wanted to have for her, but now I'm having it, only it's without her. And so it's kind of a twist. It's this weird little thing that, it's also okay to be okay sometimes, even in the loss or in the mourning.
Right. Don't beat yourself up because you're laughing and smiling and having fun.
Right.
Talking about praying for peace and this song by Jason Gray, Not Right Now, he says, while we wait for the smoke to clear, you don't even have to speak. Just sit with me in the ashes here, and together we can pray for peace to the one acquainted with our grief. If you're not sure how to walk through this with a friend, that's really what it is. It's about praying together for peace, because God knows what grief feels like. I mean, God knows so much how that feels. Sometimes we avoid walking with somebody. We avoid checking in. We avoid having an honest conversation about, are you okay? Or they say, I'm okay, and they're not, but you walk away anyway.
You're like, oh, thank goodness.
Right. Oh, I avoided that conversation.
Right.
Like how I remember one day, the folks from the crisis hotline came in. We interviewed them on the morning show, and they said, it doesn't matter how uncomfortable you are. If you are asked, nobody wants to say, do you feel suicidal? Are you having suicidal thoughts? Nobody wants to say it because they think, oh, well, I don't want to put that in their mind.
Right.
Or I don't want to make them think that I think that they might, like all these things. They said, don't be afraid to ask it.
Wow.
Don't be afraid to ask it. I thought about that a couple of months ago when the father of one of the little girls who was killed in the Sandy Hook shooting, her name was Avielle. His name was Jeremy Richmond. He took his own life. And this, of course, was years after that happened. He, in this time since his daughter died, he had started a foundation. He was what was he? He's an intelligent man. He started this nonprofit that focuses on violence prevention through research and community engagement. Violence prevention based on community engagement, about connecting with one another.
Right.
It's crazy that he was actively working towards connecting people, but he still, it's not safe to assume. I don't want to say that, but he was clearly still just broken, so broken.
Yeah. And I think that obviously I'm not a psychologist. I don't have a degree in any of this, but as a human being that's been through grief, I think that's kind of could be one of the warning signs, So if you know someone who is going through a difficult time and they seem like way okay with it, it might be an indicator that it's time for a check-in.
Not that that's necessarily what he was experiencing.
Right.
But I think that what's fair to say is that just because somebody is taking these steps and starting foundations or, writing a book or whatever, it doesn't mean that you still can't check in and really try to dig deeper and be like, no, really, are you okay?
Yeah, I mean, not to make it all about us, but I do remember very early in the grieving process with Maddie, I went to, hospice. They offer a great program, and it's fantastic. You get like 3 or 4 grief counseling sessions that are pro bono. It's part of the hospice plan right after you lose a loved one. And so I took advantage of those. And he just kept saying how together I had it and how great I was. And wow, you're just fantastic and you've got all this figured out. But I really needed somebody to help me dig deeper, even just to be there. And so that's why I, sought out further therapy afterwards. But one of the things that I learned is that you could be showing all of the outward signs of being perfect. And still, obviously, you've got that grief inside. And so now I had to learn how to sit in it, not wallow in it, but sit in it, to be with it, to be comfortable with it so that I could see where it took me, so that I could grow with it. So, as we're talking about Jeremy, who seemed to have it all together after his daughter lost her life in the Sandy Hook shooting and then ended up taking his own life. Again, we're not going to try and say where he was, but maybe he just didn't have that ability to sit and be comfortable in the grief. And so if you know somebody who's going through that and you check in with them, here's the trick. The trick is just being able to sit with them, to be that person that can help facilitate that presence and knowing that there is someone who is willing to be there with you in that discomfort, instead of trying to cheer them up or come up with the right scripture or say the right things. The best thing that you can do is to not say the right thing, is to just be there and let them experience it.
Because being not okay, it's not only allowed, really, it's essential to our growth as Christians and to our appreciation for the goodness in life. I've been listening to this song on repeat. This episode is really all about music because we love music and we're profoundly affected by music. But at Christmas time, Hillsong United, I believe, was it Hillsong Worship or United? Either way.
Yeah.
One of the Hillsong outfits released a song called Seasons. And I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, why are they singing about trees? What are they doing singing about trees? Because they talk about sequoia and all that stuff.
Alrighty then.
But the message of the song is it's all about winter and how if you're in the winter, you know that something good is coming. I mean, even though you're in the winter, spring is coming.
Unless it's Game of Thrones, in which case you're in deep, deep trouble.
And he says, I know the winter is long, even richer the harvest it brings. Though my waiting prolongs, even greater your promise for me like a seed. I believe that my season will come.
I know though the winter is long, even richer the harvest it brings. Though my waiting prolongs, even greater your promise for me like a seed. I believe that my season will come.
Almost every time I listen to it, it brings me to tears because I think about not that I'm in that winter, not that I'm in that place where I'm waiting for God to bring me out. It's that I have been there. And so I can hear it and I can say, yes, it's true. I shared it. A friend got married and she had been through a divorce and the man that she was marrying had lost his wife to cancer, and he had 2 sons. And so they're this new family coming together. And I sent her the lyrics to the song and an iTunes gift card. And I said, I know that you guys are in a good place right now. I know that you have been in a hard time. You've been in a hard place, but now you can look back and say, I was buried under the snow, but I was still a seed and there was still potential for me to grow. And so I was like, I hope this song affects you like it has affected me. And in this song, he says, if all I know of harvest is that it's worth my patience, then if you're not done working, then God, I'm not done waiting. And I don't know farming. I do not have a green thumb at all. I don't know farming. I don't know gardening. I don't know any of that stuff. But I do know that there is a point to prune. There is a point to go in and to harvest. You know, you have to let it grow. You have to let that seed open, kind of like a butterfly. You know, if you help a butterfly come out of its cocoon, it's not ready and it's not strong enough.
Now, this brings up a sore point in our marriage because there was a cocoon, a little chrysalis on the wall of our front porch for months and months and months and months. And I remember, you know, we pointed it out to the boys. We're like, it's going to be a butterfly one day, probably a moth. And you were like, oh, yeah. And you remember like a month ago, you said something about we should probably just go ahead and sweep that thing off. It's dead. And I went out to do that and it had cracked open and was gone.
You're right. The structure was gone.
No, the structure was still there.
Okay.
What's inside the structure was gone.
My theory is that like a squirrel or a bird or something came and got it.
Squirrels don't eat meat. Well, they do. But anyway, so a squirrel's not going to come and jump up 4 feet onto the wall and be able to eat that chrysalis.
Nobody at any point looked up the lifespan of a chrysalis and like how long it takes. But I'm telling you, it wasn't that long.
I'm telling you, it became a beautiful butterfly. Continue.
I wish I could. You totally distracted me. No, that the harvest is worth the patience, because in that time that it takes to grow, to morph into this butterfly, you're learning and you're growing in strength. And so if we deprive ourselves or somebody else of that time of sadness, of being not okay, then we're really robbing them of maybe growing in strength and growing in their knowledge and their love of God. You know, that is, for me in my life, I know that has been the most fruitful time. My relationships in my life grew more. I felt more blessed in that time. And I felt like I came to know God in a much deeper way. So if someone had tried to pull me out so fast, I think, gosh, what would I have missed out on?
So before we close, I definitely want to say a couple of things. If right now you are in that place where you are not okay, just know that it's okay to be in it. And if you need someone to walk with you through it, you have a friend. You know, don't be afraid to reach out and just ask them to sit with you. It's quite all right. And just like Abby was saying a minute ago, it's really hard to say, but if you are having those suicidal thoughts, you do need to reach out to someone. So if you are in that place and you have considered ending it or hurting yourself, I would encourage you to reach out. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. They do have online chat as well, so you can be anonymous. You can text with them. You can chat with them. There are many ways to reach out and get the help that you need.
And if you want to hear any of the songs that we've referenced, you can find links in the show notes. We give a huge thumbs up to all three. Hopefully they bring you comfort, and hopefully they bring you peace.
And so there's really no good transition for this, but that's the end of our podcast. We do close every episode with a segment where we share a moment from the past week, something significant that happened that either opened your eyes or made you want to hide your eyes or just made you laugh out loud. So your moment for the week, my dear?
Well, if you listened to episode 1, which was like the backstory, the premise behind the podcast, why we named it and a little bit about us, my moment was that that I lost, well, I didn't lose, but our snail, I couldn't find our snail.
Disappearing snail. Speedy the disappearing snail.
And it turned out he like buries himself. Well, we thought he buried himself. Turns out he was getting friendly with himself, apparently.
Speedy the procreating snail.
Yeah, because we now have like 5 baby snails.
5 little, and when they start out, they're like proto snails. You can't even tell what they are. They're so microscopic. It's
They're
crazy.
like specks of dirt.
Yeah.
Really. And so I'm pretty sure that there's probably been at least 10 more is my guess. And the fish have eaten them. But I did some research and I found out that a lot of freshwater snails are hermaphrodites. When I told the boys, look, there's a baby snail, they're like, well, how is there a baby snail? They know enough that it takes 2. They don't understand anything else, but they know it takes 2. And I'm like, I haven't explained actual birds and bees. Like, how am I going to explain a hermaphroditic snail?
Hermaphroditic snail.
So that is the joy that is in our home right now. We have Speedy the snail who will not stop having babies.
How much can you make on the secondhand snail market?
I don't. But I wanted to say to Speedy, I'm like, keep your hands to yourself. But in this case, that wouldn't really work because he, she is himself, herself.
Oh my gosh.
So many pronouns.
Oh
anyway,
my goodness.
What was your moment for the week, Davis?
So Mike Donaghy from 10th Ave North has finally decided to write a book, and it's called Finding God's Life for My Will. His presence is the plan. Now, it's already available.
Great. Wait, can you say the name a little bit slower? Because it's important.
It is important. It's Finding God's Life for My Will.
Haha. Where normally people would say Finding God's Will for My Life.
Right.
You get it?
Mike does a really better job of explaining that
than I just did,
than I could,
okay.
or than you just did on his Amazon page. But anyway, it came out for pre-sale already. It's actually going to be ready in, I think, August. So when I saw Mike post about it, I remember having a conversation with him a couple of years ago about him stepping out and writing this book. And he was scared to death. He's like, Davis, I don't know what I'm getting myself into or why I'm doing it. But he's really enjoyed the process. And so I wanted to support my friend and buy the book before it came out. So I ordered it on Amazon, and I know it's coming to me. Well, a few days after I ordered it on Amazon, I get in the mail a preview print copy. Doesn't have the actual cover that's the new official cover, but it's a preview copy, and it even says on there that there might be some typos in here, just ignore it. So I have gotten to start reading it. I've only got about 4 chapters into it, but it is everything I had ever hoped for. And so that's kind of my happy moment for the week. I've now got 2 copies, a pre-release and the one that's coming to me.
Do you want to give away the second copy?
So you're saying you would like me to give away the copy that I bought with my hard-earned money?
No, I want you to give away the copy that management sent you.
Oh, no, I can't give that one out.
Why?
That's the more important one. I'd rather give away the one I paid
for. Yes. So why don't you comment under the Instagram photo or the Facebook photo for this episode, for episode 4, and all those comments will get you into a drawing.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Yeah, supporting Mike Donaghy.
Aren't we nice?
His YouTube videos, or when he puts out little videos that came to radio stations, he was like constantly quoting like Dostoevsky and stuff. I'm like, dude, you read a lot.
He is so well read.
Yeah.
So well read. When he told me he was going to write a book, I was like, oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. Of course you're going to write a book. You're so smart. And he's just scared to death. I'm so glad he did it. Anyway.
So tell us your moment and tag us at Perhaps Podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Perhaps Podcast. And if you're listening episode by episode, you are missing out. You got to subscribe.
Absolutely. And make sure you give us a 5-star rating because we're worth 5 stars. We love you. We love you. So hit us up on iTunes and make sure you give us that 5-star rating.
And thanks so much for listening. That's going to do it for episode 4 of the Perhaps This Is a Podcast.
Perhaps this
Maybe
is a podcast.
Maybe it is. I don't know. The Perhaps This Is a Moment podcast. Bye.